I found tumor news Wednesday. My boyfriend found out Saturday when I couldn't hide the tears anymore. 3 days of nothing in between. Those 3 days tell you everything. Wednesday was a routine scan. Nothing dramatic. I'd had headaches for 2 months and my doctor wanted to rule things out. The radiologist came back into the room with a different expression than he'd left with, and I understood before he said a word that something had changed. He said small. He said likely benign. He said we need more tests before we know anything. He said don't panic yet. I drove home alone because I'd told Noah not to come. I'd thought it was routine. I sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could make myself start the car, and when I did, I turned the radio off immediately because I needed the silence to hold something that didn't have a shake yet. I made dinner that night. I don't know why. I think my hands needed something to do. I made pasta and I set the table and we ate, and I didn't say anything because I was still deciding how to say it. And Noah talked about his week, and I listened and thought this is the last ordinary night for a while. Thursday I had more tests. My best friend Petra came with me because I'd called her Wednesday night and she'd shown up 20 minutes later with her overnight bag already packed like she'd been waiting for the call. We sat in every waiting room. She held my hand during the MRI even though the technician said she wasn't supposed to be in there, and she looked at him with a specific expression and he didn't say it again. Friday the doctor called with preliminary results. Still unclear. More waiting. Could be nothing. Could be something. Particular torture of medical uncertainty, which is that you can't grieve a maybe and you can't celebrate a maybe and you just have to carry it around while life continues requiring things of you. Friday night I told Noah. Sat across from him at the kitchen table where I'd made pasta 2 days ago, and I told him everything. The scan, the follow-up, the waiting, the things sitting in my head that might be nothing or might be the reason I'd had headaches for 2 months. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, how serious is it? They didn't know yet. He said, so it might be nothing. I said it might be. He said, okay, well, let's not panic until we know something. I looked at him. He said, these things are usually nothing. You said yourself it's probably benign. I said, the doctor said probably. He said, right, so we wait. Then he picked up his phone. I sat at the kitchen table for another few minutes, and then I went to take a shower and stood under the water for a long time, thinking about Petra driving 20 minutes with an overnight bag and a technician who backed down, and my boyfriend who said we wait and then picked up his phone. The following week was the longest I've ever lived through. More tests, more waiting rooms. Noah came to one appointment, the first one, and spent most of it on his phone in the hallway because the waiting room was small and he got restless. He said he'd be right outside. He was right outside on his phone. Petra came to everything else. The results came back on a Thursday, 2 weeks after the first scan. Benign. Monitoring required. Small procedure recommended. Nothing immediately dangerous. The doctor used the word relieved, and I started crying before she finished the sentence. The kind of crying that comes from 2 weeks of carrying something heavy and suddenly being allowed to set it down. I called Petra from the car. She screamed. I cried more. We stayed on the phone for 40 minutes. Then I called Noah. He said, see, I told you it would be fine. I held the phone and looked out the windshield at the hospital parking lot and thought about 2 weeks. About the table I'd made pasta at. About right outside on his phone. About the shape of who someone is when the situation gets hard, and how clearly that shape becomes visible when you're paying a different kind of attention. I said, I need to tell you something. He said, what? I said, I was scared for 2 weeks and you were not present for most of it. He said, I was there. I came to the appointment. I said, you were in the hallway on your phone. He said I was overreacting. He said he'd been there the whole time. He said I needed to not make this into something it wasn't. I thought about Petra in an MRI room she wasn't supposed to be in. I said, I'm not making it into something. I'm telling you what it was. He said I was being unfair. I said, I know you believe that. Then I started the car. The apartment took 3 weeks to divide. Noah kept saying I was making a decision based on one hard situation. I said I was making a decision based on who he was when things got hard, which is the only information that actually matters. Petra helped me move. Of course she did. She brought her overnight bag.